Yes. So we've reached the end where we're getting to some of the proposed solutions for how we can deal with some of this anxious energy that this next generation is exhibiting. So we can just open it up and say, well, what were some of the solutions that stood out to you that maybe looked very implementable or interesting to you?
I'm trying to find the quote, but I liked his analogy about the whale fishing for minnows off the back of a whale or something. And I was kind of it dawned on me like how strongly he feels about the phone. Not like, I mean, he wrote a whole book on it, but the fact that he was saying all these other things that we try to do with bringing in mindfulness, bringing in other things to try to address the anxiety problem in school. He's like, you're wasting your money if you don't get rid of the phones. And I thought that was a pretty bold statement. And I've just thought about it over the last few days as I take kids' phones every class and they get them right back when they leave. And that, just the fact that that wouldn't, well, I don't know if it would cost very much money if you have to use the pouches and stuff, but just all this other money that we're spending is probably just as much, if not more, and could be a cure. So I just thought it was a pretty powerful sentence, and not a phrase I had ever heard of before, but was kind of interesting to me anyway.
Yeah. Thank you for starting us off.
The chapter on what schools can do now, I want to copy that entire chapter and give it to our school district.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of interesting, even if the districts kind of understand some of this stuff, it doesn't mean they necessarily follow that advice. And of course, it's a subjective thing. But so, I mean, I'm retired now, but this year my former school district, still my school district, I guess, did go to ban phones. And there are no phones in elementary schools and there are no phones in middle schools. But I have a little bit of concern with what they're doing with the high school, although they claim it's better. So nobody can use their phone during class time, but it's okay to have it with you, and it's okay to use it during passing periods, and it's okay to use it during lunch. And I don't think that's a good idea. I think that he talked about the fact that just having the phone in your pocket is a distraction for you, even if you don't use it. You're thinking about it. You're thinking of, what am I going to do during the passing period? Who am I going to call? Who am I going to text? I would love to get the statistics on tardies. I might hypothesize that the number of students late to class will increase or has increased because kids get tangled up in their phones in the 6 minutes between classes. But so, I mean, I was talking with one of the assistant principals at the school I was at, and she told me that the district had every administrator read this book over the summer. And so they've all read it, and the school district has read it, and I think the school board has probably read it. And I think he's pretty clear when he says the phones should not be in the high schools at all. But they didn't go that far. And I think, when he was saying that, the cat's out of the bag and maybe we can't do anything about what's already going on, but we could change things for the future. I think they maybe were like, well, we can't tell these kids they can't have their phones. And instead of just saying, no phones. And whether you do that with pouches or lockers, I have some other thoughts on that as well. But just because they hear this message doesn't mean they're going to follow this message, right? And I have no doubt things are better, but honestly, it's still early in the school year. It's not first semester still, and we'll see what happens, right? We'll see what happens. Kids are pretty clever about how to hide the use of their phone during class, and I just feel like if they've got it, it weighs upon them. It's a distraction, And so a solution has to be to remove that distraction completely. Right. So it's a little bit, I'm a reformed smoker. I haven't smoked in 36 years, but I was a pretty heavy smoker back in the day. And it was really interesting. Some of the tricks we thought we could get away with, we were going to quit smoking. But, every now and then it was okay to have one. When you went out for drinks, go ahead, have a cigarette. As a recipe for being a pack a day smoker again the next day. Or the idea that I'm going to keep a pack of cigarettes here at my house for guests. It's like, who are you kidding? You're not kidding anybody but yourself. And I think I feel like that's what my district is doing at the high schools, is that you're kidding yourself if you think just letting kids use it during lunch and during passing periods is a good idea. I mean, during lunch, they're not talking to each other, right? They should be talking with each other and maybe try and get in a quick game of chess or something like that instead of getting on their phones. So I wouldn't put a lot of hopes at people hearing the message and suddenly seeing the light and acting on it.
So Patrick, and I don't know about you guys, what your experience is, but I know for me personally, when I go out for a walk, it makes all the difference in the world whether I have my phone with me or not. Like sometimes I'll be waiting for a call, or I'll be having to make a call at a certain time, and that's when I can walk. And if I have that phone on me, it just changes the whole experience. And you're right, like it takes your attention. And it's maybe every 5 minutes, or whatever you think of it and you check it, but it definitely impacts your concentration. It definitely impacts your frame of mind. No doubt. Completely different experience with and without the phone. Out walking. So, but the other thing that struck me, and agreed, it seems pretty clear it had to do without the phones. And I don't want to be like the bleeding heart or the softy, but I do think, like, especially now for the kids, I think we do have to put some things in place to teach them how to interact. Like, it's not just going to happen, right? So, like, chess might be a good suggestion, but there probably are steps that we do have to take along with the taking of the phone to help them transition, right? Great for, eventually we'll get there. But like we've talked about, several times, kids are emotionally attached. Like it's going to be a transition if we truly take those phones away. And however that looks, I don't pretend to be the expert, but I just in general, I would say from when it's been a couple of years, but a year and a half, but since I was in there firsthand experiencing it, but there's no doubt, and I think you would all agree, it was a game changer. Like, it has completely changed the environment in the high school phones, completely. And anybody that says otherwise hasn't spent any time with teenagers or in high school. It is a game changer, and we have to, quite frankly, have to figure out a way to reverse it. And like I said, I think the taking the phone away is imperative, but I do think they're going to need some other supports. And
Well, I personally like the way he talks about having play built into it. Even in high schools, opportunities for people to go out and do stuff that doesn't involve their phone.
Yeah, isn't that what's great about modeling, though?
yeah,
And that's like, that's part of the reason why I wanted to do this book, is because it does actually mimic play in the sense that there's some freedom, and it does give students some structure of how to interact with each other, because they do need some help and how to, like, if you're going to put down the phone, we'll give them something to do. And so it's okay, here's this thing, and I want you to figure some stuff out, right? So there's like this unstructured part of it. And so, okay, go do the thing. But then within that, there is this, okay, but also figure this thing out, right? They have a task to do, they have something to accomplish, but there is this looseness to it, that they have this ability to try to think for themselves. And I think that's a lot of what I got out of when I was reading this. I was like, oh, this is modeling. This is what we do when we say, like, figure it out. And they hate it at the beginning. I mean, that's why they hate it so much, is because they're so used to not having that. They're so used to being told what to do and how to do it. And, you know, and every little, push this button and then do that thing, and then I get my reward. Right. And like, and that's not how it works. And so, well, at least in modeling, like, that's not how it works. And so we just like help, you know, retrain those systems and how to like get the reward. So that's, I don't know, that's part of why I think modeling needs to be in the schools, is we have this ability to not just, and here, and one of the remarkable things that I have seen this year, specifically with my college students, is they are putting away their phones. It's crazy that I will walk into my classroom now, and it is the old style stadium seating where I put them in groups, and I put college students in assigned seats in forced groups. And do you know how weird they do not love it? They don't understand, but I do a whole thing at the beginning, and I help them understand, like, this is why we're doing the thing, and you're gonna do, this is why I make these choices, blah, blah, blah. And this is the first time, I guess, because I've really paid attention to it. I have noticed that I will come down, anyways, the building's weird, so I can come down these stairs to the bottom of the, you know, the lecture, and I can hear them talking to each other before I get in the room, because they don't have their phones out and they're actually talking to each other. And then after, like, I realized that I talked to them and said, hey guys, do you see it? Like, do you see what you're doing? I said, do you do this in your other classes? You know, and they like realize, like, no, they don't. Because they get to other classes and they sit down and they pull their phones out. And I'm like, no, this is cool, right? Don't you like coming to this class because you know each other, because you interact with each other? Like, wouldn't that be cool if you did that in your other classes? I'm just note it. And maybe like note why this is different, and maybe you could carry that into your other classes. Just saying.
You make such a good point, Brooke, and I wish we could gather some data on it. But I always, you know, talk about it kind of, I guess, subjectively with folks when I do a workshop or do a professional development. In that, yes, we have data to show modeling is effective, and yes, we can show, you know, increased learning, and yes, we align with NGA, all those things. I said, but to me, as a teacher, as important as all that stuff is, the experience in the classroom, just the experience of the students and the teacher, because to me, I do think it's important for the teacher to have a good experience too, right? That does affect the, you know, the learning environment and so forth. But I couldn't agree more. Like that, it creates that environment where you can grow those really essential, what lots of folks call soft skills, right?
Oh yeah.
And I just think that's as much a part of why modeling works as anything. And I don't know, like I think Patrick probably knows this, but way back in the beginning, you know, David Hesnes, who came up with all the theory behind this stuff, he stepped back because he knew he didn't understand the culture. He didn't know what was truly going to work in terms of those conversations and supporting an effective learning environment in the high school classroom. So he had all the theory behind it, and he had, you know, really high level stuff. But he knew it was also very important to allow space, you know, and that's, I think, what you're talking about, right? Space, time for folks to, like you say, figure stuff out. Like that, it's not all prescripted. It's no fun, right? It's all prescripted. So anyway, I think, and I mean, kind of full circle, you know, when you come back, I think that is the problem with the phones, is a lot of it is, you know, it's the algorithms, it is scripted. Not only is it scripted, but it's leading you into your next piece of what you're interested in next. It's telling you what you're interested in. Sometimes it's convenient, but it's also dangerous.
Yeah.
It's like the Pink Floyd song "Welcome to the Machine."
Yeah,
What
exactly.
did the line? What did you dream? It's all right. We told you what to dream.
Yeah.
Yeah, I the the presence of the phone is a real issue. Removing that is going to be a real challenge. I One of the things he touched on, but he really didn't talk about it very much, as I recall, was the idea of, well, first of all, the making an internet adult at 16, I think is fine. But he says don't let a kid have a smartphone till they're 13. Again, why not go to 16 when they're internet adults? And then the idea that the phone manufacturers and or the carriers could identify a phone electronically as a minor's phone, and without having to give away who it is, just that this phone belongs to a minor. And so if they try and sign up for Facebook or Instagram or something like that, it's no longer them telling the truth about their age. It's no, the phone says you're not 16. We don't know how old you are, but you're not 16. And so you cannot sign up for this. And then as far as the school stuff, I remember when my youngest daughter first got a cell phone, and the problem there wasn't social media because her phone didn't have anything like that. I don't think there was anything like that, but it was text messages. And I may have shared with you before that the first month she had a phone, it was a flip phone. First month, she was a party to, I believe it was 13,000 text messages, which was like, that's all she was doing, was sending and receiving texts. And so this was a real problem. And I ended up talking to, I think it was probably Verizon at that time, and found out for $5 a month, I could start putting restrictions on when her phone did things, right? Like when she could make phone calls, when she could send or receive a text. And I could set up those times. And I could also add that she could always contact me or her mother or her big sister, always. And I think that might be an interesting solution for smartphones, is if it's a minor's phone, and they're gonna cry and piss and moan, the providers, about how much work this is, but come on, it's not work for them. So you say that you are in uh, the Acme School District and you're a student there, and now your phone simply will not send or receive or browse anything during school hours, period. It just won't. So you don't have to take the phone from them. It doesn't work. They can't make a phone call. They can't go on Facebook. They can't check Instagram. If they need to call dad, they can, but that's it. And then school's over, phone goes back to normal. It might be a simpler solution than pouches or lockers. Be cheaper because you'd make Verizon pay for it. And again, it's just a programming thing. It would not cost them money, really. I don't believe, at least not much, to do that. So I think that's an interesting solution. And then when the phone is no longer a minor's phone, it goes to full function, or during other times, not school.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Listen,
I was kind of, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead, Jacqueline. I'm
No,
sorry.
I was just gonna say that chapter gave me some hope, like where I didn't know like there were technological ways to maybe control or get, he talked about, I was just looking for it, the age appropriate design code from the UK that was enacted in
Yeah.
2020. I just wondered if, like, it would have been nice to know if they had some data in the UK. I don't remember him talking about like if they've seen a change since making that change in the law. And I guess California adopted part of it in 2022. You know, it kind of seems long enough that maybe they'd have some data to share about how, did that help? But this is a much nicer section of the book to read when he's talking about things that we can possibly enact about it. And anyway, I didn't know if there was any data. I don't remember reading any, but it seems like we have a little bit of information with some places that have made changes.
Yeah. That's a great point, Jacqueline. I was just going to say, just to kind of add to that, what Patrick was just talking about, like money should not be the barrier here, for, when you, when you talk about, the phone companies, the social media companies, and do not tell me they don't have the money or
Oh, yeah.
the capability to solve this. If this is a problem they want to solve, it's solved, right? In terms of, now, you bring up a good point, right? So collect data, is it effective, all that. Um, you know, it'll be interesting to see what happens with, the whole let's call it the regulation of the technology companies.
Yeah, and I think also what you had mentioned about getting the kids on board a little bit or having to do some training with them. There was a chapter that it was from the last part of the book, but I don't think we really talked about it much, chapter 8, that just talked a lot about, it was called spiritual elevation and degradation. And just how much that that there's nothing, that this is kind of a real thing that humans need, and that there's nothing about the phone that gives them that. And I really started to get more positive about, or start to feel a little bit more hopeful about the whole thing when I started reading chapter 8. And then now he's kind of putting, some real things into place. That it was, I don't know, it was a little inspiring. And it's not like I didn't really, I kind of knew after reading chapter 8 that was necessary, but I thought he communicated that very well. And I wonder how much we communicate that to our students, that they really need those things. I mean, I can feel myself after I've been on the computer too long, or that I need to get outside. I need to find that something bigger than me. And I love the whole talk about awe. I listened to probably 3 podcasts since then on awe, and just what a necessary piece of our mental health that is, in making ourselves feel small in the light of something larger than ourselves. And that was just really, I don't know, I just feel like you read that chapter and how can you say the phones are doing that much good? I mean, yeah, we need them, and there's certain, things that we work with them and whatever, but that piece, and that's why I'm, again, with maybe the play-based stuff that he's trying to bring back in, that giving them that opportunity and making sure they get that. Because I think everybody deep down, I think, can feel like when they are missing that.
And again, aren't there times when science does that for you? When you're like, isn't this so cool? Do you see how cool this is? And you have that moment with their students when they get to figure it out. When they see oh, and that light bulb goes on for themselves. When you're not just the sage on the stage and you're and this is why this is the thing. That they never get to have that moment. But because when they unfold it, when they are the ones who discover it, they get to have those aha moments, and they get to experience oh, the universe is a cool thing. That exoplanet is so cool. And now I understand that why this is cool. And that's why we're scientists. That's why we fell in love with this stuff. And I think that's part of why we can do this. I mean, personally, I happen to be a religious person. I do connect to a higher power. I do that as well. But I also feel awe when it comes to science. And we get into the really small stuff, and I'm isn't it cool how, these cells work this way, or the electrons do this thing, or, I find that, and I hope to translate that to my students as we go through the exploration process. Which I think, again, I think it's part of why modeling is cool.
I couldn't agree with you guys more. Given that open space to just discover that magic, and to have that moment where it's just the the student, I'll just put it this way, we set them up to have the perception like they are the first ones to discover this, like, and which is fine, right? I mean, that's how it, that's what, why we design the courses the way we do. But to have that open um, space, time in their brain to allow that to happen, um, it's just not going to happen if the brain's cluttered with all those messages, all that information. Um, I, I, and I just can't pronounce the guy's name, but there's a gentleman I've been really checking out. He is from Israel, and he talks a lot about AI and what's happening with AI. But I loved his metaphor. He said, they're out there telling us that more information's better, right? Like these kids are going to be better off because they have more information, right? Like you don't want to cut people off, right? More information, and that's going to make them smarter. And he's like, really? Like he's like, let's take that analogy and let's go with food. Like, is it more better? Like necessarily? He's like, like most of what's out there, most of what's being given to the kids and fed to us, quite frankly, it's uh, it's nonsense, right? A lot of it is just not good information. It's not factual. And then he makes the point of truth and searching for um, you know explanations that actually make us think and delve deeper into truly understanding what's going on, more complex models. He's like, that takes work. Like that's hard. He's like, that's not what they're putting out there. It's like the nonsense, the lies, the junk, like that's easy to produce. That's easy to throw out there. It is all over the place. So I just find that kind of interesting. Like we do kind of have this lingering, or I guess, yeah, like leftover idea that I know for me, like you were always, we were, I was anyway, and growing up, I don't know about you guys, but you were always searching for information. It was hard to get, right? You had to go to the library, get the books, you had to look stuff up, and like getting good information, you had to work for, right? Now, like you really don't have to work as hard, but you do have to be aware of all that like junk that's coming into you, right? How do you filter that out? And to think that a kid that's 12, 13, 14 is going to be able to do that, like, I'm not real confident. I know with my own kids, I'm not real confident. Listen, and I have trouble myself, right? With all that.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's plenty of adults out there that still have a hard time with that.
Yeah, I think we all,
And
yeah,
that it's not a criticism, it's just how it is.
yeah.
Yeah, the skill is gonna not be, can you find the information? It's the filtering of the information.
For sure.
Yeah, because it's been really, I joined we call it a community of practice at the university on AI. And so I tried to learn a lot more about it this semester. And I was really shocked at how, like, what it hallucinates when it comes to information that's not actually out there. So you ask it to find something for you or do something for you. And with absolute confidence, it will tell you, yeah, this is the answer. And you're like, no, it's actually not.
So,
But you have the wisdom to know that. And then that's the
Yeah.
difference. It's not that you know the answer, but you have to have the wisdom to be like, that doesn't make sense. And that's what we're trying to train our students to do, right? It's not know everything, but be able to sniff out the not so logical.
So I don't know if you guys have heard this, but this is a great time to bring this up. It's a little bit of an aside, but it's so interesting. So you know how they give you those images to make sure you're a human, and you have to put the pieces together and everything. So I don't know if you're aware, but there are, some AI have solved that. And you know how they did it? It's fascinating. They the AI went and asked people to solve it for them. It said, I'm visually, because the people then said, like, how do I know you're not a robot? They said, I'm visually impaired. Could you please solve this for me and tell me what this says? And so, like, to your point, like, do we really want to trust these bots? You know, it's going to be an interesting uh, transition, let's say, as the bots get
Yeah.
their agency becomes more and more independent and they become smarter. Can you imagine? And they would lie to the people and say,
What?
they have no scruples, right? They don't care.
Yeah. Well,
It's
so
solve the problem.
yeah, I was using it to try to like do some data crunching for me. And it was a very simple, like, count the number of this on this spreadsheet. And the spreadsheet was not that big. Like, it was a really small thing, but the data was kind of jumbled. And so it was just easier to like ask it to process some data for me. And like I said, with absolute confidence, it was like, here's your numbers. And I was like, no, you didn't read all the way down the spreadsheet. You only went to like line 45 and there's like 63 lines on it. And it was like, oh, sorry about that. And like, so it did the numbers again and again. I'm like, no, okay, that was great. You went all the way down to line 65, but you didn't read out to column, like there's 23 questions on this and you read to column 16. Like, so I said, like, read the whole spread, like what? Like, and like with absolute confidence, it told me, here's your answers. And I'm like, anyways, I'm sure it's gonna get, and everyone tells me, oh, it's gonna get better at it. It's gonna get better at it. I'm like, I'm sure, but like, it just is concerning. I don't know. It's very interesting to me that this is what we're dealing with right now. And this is, I mean, it's really helpful. In fact, I actually have asked it to do lots of things for me. And lots of times it's very helpful, but that I thought was a very straightforward task I was giving it, and it did not complete it correctly. Which I found very interesting. Yeah. It wrote a proposal for me, which was actually quite good.
I remember a number of years ago, I became a Gates Fellow, and it's part of the Gates Fellowship. You got computers for your room, which is really why I did it. But they also got a lot of software. And do you guys remember Encarta?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I remember going to Encarta, and I said, you know, and they had lots of tools. So I wanted to write a report on dogs, and I wanted to use Encarta to research it, and then it would also write in Word for me. And so I wrote up this report about dogs. I wrote it up. And I took it to one or two of my colleagues and said, so what do you think about this report? And they're like, well, you know, it's okay, blah, blah, blah. And I said, you know, Encarta wrote that. I did not read one word of any of those articles. I have no idea what that report says, but I could turn that in and get credit for it. I hadn't even read it. And I think that's one of the dangers of AI is if you let it do that stuff, it'll do it. Might even pass it off. So I was also going to say, I don't know if any of you can look in the chat, but we were talking about modeling and having to have the wisdom to be able to gather all this information and understand it and use it. So there's a little graphic, logo, whatever you want to call it, that I came up with years ago, and one of my students made this for me. I don't know, I just thought I'd share it with you if you want to look at it, and it kind of encapsulates what I've always thought was what we tried to do. So there you go.
It's cool. I like it. Thanks for sharing that, Patrick.
It's kind of my logo. I think I actually put that on a coffee cup.
Ah, very cool. Very cool.
And a big poster.
Yeah. And thanks for bringing us back. You're right. We should be focusing on, yeah, our modeling and the things that we can do. Yeah. Yeah. So what other things can we do? to help.
Right. I wish there was a way to do like outreach with parents, because I mean, we can certainly lobby, and I think we should. We can certainly lobby tech companies and the government to do what they need to do, pass a few laws, and you can play them off each other, right? Tech companies don't want the government to pass these laws. Okay, well, if they don't want to pass the laws, maybe you could provide things like establishing phones that are minors' phones, and then having the restrictions on there and making it so that it doesn't work during the school day and things like that. Um, and we can do that. I think we should do that. But really, parents are key in this thing, right? And I wish there was some way to do some outreach to the parents to help, discussions like we're having, not telling them because, look, this is how I want you to raise your child. Damn it, it's important. You do it this way or you're a loser. No, that's not probably going to work. But I don't know, maybe starting early, like when parents come into kindergarten, and it's like, well, we want to form a group with parents to help to work together to see how that we address this particular threat, which is, I think, what we have to consider it. It's a threat to our society. It's a threat to the student's mental health. And I think that's a good place to start is, there's it's so obvious how many examples there are of kids that are damaged. They're not healthy mentally and physically, but just, and maybe try some kind of reach out to them to work with them so they can see that thing and do things like, we understand why a parent would want a child to have a phone, but it doesn't need to be a smartphone, right? Kids, when they first learn to drive, I mean, my parents didn't buy me a car when I was 16, but if they had, I'd be willing to bet an awful lot that they wouldn't have bought me a Corvette, right? It's like, what you need is a 73 Toyota Corona, because it starts and it gets you to where you need to go. And that's all it needs to do. But, and so tell the kids, look, if you feel like if your lifestyle, if both parents are working and you just need to be able to contact your kids or have your kids contact you, try some of those like kid watches they have, which they can make phone calls or just a flip phone or something like that. And let's wait until they're 16 to give them a smartphone. And I think there's reasons why a smartphone could be appropriate at 16. And they're a little bit older, a little bit wiser. So some kind of reach out support groups, kind of, working with parents, because parents are overwhelmed and they're not going to be able to do this on their own. And, part of the, what did he call it? The collective problems that we have, where Johnny got a smartphone. Well, Sam needs one now too. And now pretty quick, if you don't have a smartphone, you're a cast out. And so everybody in the 7th grade has got smartphones, which is not the case. And if we were working with parents starting elementary, working their way up, when the time comes, the kids, there's no expectation on the kids' part they're ever going to get a smartphone. When you turn 16, you get a driver's license, maybe that's a good time to have a phone like that. So
Patrick, I think that I am hopeful. I feel like being in high school right now, like this year, I work at a district that really gives the kids a lot of freedom. Like, we don't have study halls. They can, if they don't have a class, they can be anywhere in the school. They can leave in their cars and come back. They really have always had a philosophy of like treating them like adults, even though I'm not sure they always should. But so I was kind of shocked that this year our school really is taking a very strong look at the phones. And there was one, I wish I'd been able to see it, but 2 weeks ago, a woman came, her last name is Twenge, but she did a lot of research that Jonathan Haidt quotes and uses in his book. And I was just looking at the poster for it. There were probably like 10 entities in the town that I teach that funded this thing, because to have her come speak to the community, because I really just think it is taking more center stage. I think just like we're convening as teachers to study it, I really do think that parents are starting to do it too. And I also have siblings with really young kids, and they're very, I just think it, like all of these kind of programs like I think it was like let them grow or Project Grow and things like those are, I think, starting to take sort of a grassroots hold and spreading. So hopefully between like what he's doing and the teachers are starting to study, I do think that the parents are starting to do that as well. Like you said, I don't think it hurts to keep having more outreach. But I know in my town, if this wasn't parent initiated, it wouldn't be happening. And so it had to come from the parents, just because I know the way my school works, that they were the ones that said, hey, can we look at this as a school? And I think already there's been some actions in the younger grades that have taken place. And so they're taking a hard look at it at the high school. So it gives me hope that my hope is that this was, a new drug on the street and nobody knew exactly what it was going to do. And like we do, we're always human guinea pigs, and we're gonna, we have to find out we'll run with it until we find out what's not working with it. And hopefully there'll be some correction, but yeah, it is also scary with other things coming at us like AI and how that's going to work. But I'm hopeful, a little bit more hopeful than I was after reading the beginning of the book. But
One thing that actually been interesting for me is I've run into a few people who totally disagree with this book.
I'd like to hear more about that. Do you know why or what they're basing?
I'm still trying to get to the bottom of it. Yeah, they don't agree with his stance. They don't think that smartphones are as big of a problem as he makes them out to be. They think there's other things at play, which, I don't disagree with, but I think, like you mentioned at the very beginning, they're more like the minnows.
Yeah, and kind of similar to that. I'm definitely aware of some folks and in leadership positions that are of the mindset that we need to figure this out, and not having the technology in the hands of the kids is just um, artificially um, kind of thinking we're going to control the problem. In other words, like really like they redefine the problem. They think the problem is we have to figure out how to teach and how kids learn with the phone with them, right? And using it as a tool. And that's a viewpoint, right? So that's out there. So Jacqueline, that's the, you said hear more, like, I definitely know a couple people that are of that mindset. Now, I will say, uh, at least one has since changed their mind on that. Like that was in the beginning when all the technology was there. And my kind of viewpoint is kind of like what Patrick says, like we should have control over that device. And it may be true that there are tools and programs and things on whatever, not just the phone, but on any kind of device, and it could be a phone, that could be helpful. But we know there's things on there that need to be controlled, right? That the data is pretty clear on that. So I don't know. One of the things that was running through my head when, I was thinking about these solutions was, I'm sure we all remember all the commercials, like Patrick, you brought up smoking, right? I mean, there was damage done and they just had to put the word out there, right? Like there just wasn't a choice about it. And I guess there's not enough data. I guess it's not strong enough, compelling enough for, there to be regulation to say, listen, there has to be an educational component, put out there to parents, to kids, on these platforms, so everyone's aware of the situation. Kind of like the warning that they have to print on, the cigarette box, right?
Well, there's precedent for some of that. We don't let 13-year-olds go into a casino. Why is that? Why do we not let them go in there?
Or in a bar, right?
Or in a bar, or drive a car.
Drive a car, right? Absolutely. That's what I'm saying. I'm just wondering, like, why is that the case? I'm just wondering out loud, like why have we not gotten to that point? Maybe we will.
Well, it is awfully new. I mean, my family, my oldest daughter graduated in 2007, and she wanted to take a trip to New York, so we went. Never been there before. I actually don't care if I ever go there again. but we were there in their New York Apple store right there by Central Park on the day the very first iPhone became available. Like CNN vans were parked outside and all that stuff. That was 2007, right? So in I don't know, but in sociological circles, I'll bet you 17 years isn't really all that long. And so this is a new thing, and somebody had mentioned earlier, we tried it out. We had no idea. We had no idea where it was going to go, what the implications were going to be. What we saw was a computer in the palm of your hands. And sure enough, if a student used it that way, great. But in my classes, they didn't tend to use it that way. They weren't looking for information to help them with their assignment. They were looking for how many likes they got on their last post. I mean, that's just what was happening. And
Well, I
so
think
yeah, I'm for the controls, but I'm not for bans. I mean, like, don't let any kid under 16 have a phone under any circumstances. That's crazy.
right. So I'm just curious what you guys think about, like, I remember when when the calculators, right, were first being brought into the classroom and we were using the calculators, and there was that whole argument, right? It's the end of, thinking in math, right? Like, this is the ruination of school, having calculators, right? There was that whole debate. I'm sure, you've been part of more than one conversation about that. And I just wonder, like, I think a lot of reasonable people said, well, no, like, you can use a calculator, and you still have to think mathematically, right? You need to, there's lots of thinking, other than the calculation. And how much of that argument then kind of morphed, if you will, into this. And people thought, oh, well, it's just technology, right? Like, the calculators seem to be fine. Like, so this will probably be fine. And I think that may be to our peril, but I just think there's a possibility of, kind of, equating the two. And I think it's a whole different animal when you introduce social media and the like.
Well, I agree, but I still think there's something about being able to do long division without a calculator. And I had a math advisor once say, well, when was the last time you did long division without a calculator? It's like, okay, point taken. And then the current, joke today is when our math teachers told us, look, you're not always going to have a calculator with you. And today's kid says, you want to bet?
Well,
it's right here. We got it. So, but yeah, it is the same kind of thing. We had no idea what we were doing.
yeah.
Now I think we're getting an idea of what we're doing. So
A friend of mine, said that similar thing to her son about, well, you have to be able to write, and you have to be able to spell. And he's like, no, I don't. He like pulls his phone out and he's like, hey Siri, how do you spell? He said, I got all the answers.
Guilty.
Oh, Siri's going to spell. Siri's going to spell for me.
But whenever I want to write an email to somebody that is kind of an important email, and I don't want to look like the idiot that I really am, I'll write it out in Word, because Word will come up and say, that's not how you spell that. And this is a better grammatical way of saying that. So I get it, then I copy and paste.
Oh, now try doing it with AI. It's even better. Because you can say, okay, here's my best effort at it. Now make it nicer, or make it more, yeah. I mean, you can tell it to do, I don't know, like make it more empathetic.
Yeah.
Make it more, I don't know, sound like I am writing from a university, or make it, I mean, I have oh yeah, it's so fun.
AI is going to come along and make us sound more human.
Or less, depending on what your
Less.
training data set looks like.
Yeah.
I mean, here's the crazy thing. You can give it your emails and say, write an email in my style. But the thing is, now it has your emails. Do you want it to have your emails?
So do you suppose you
I
could
don't
like,
give it my emails, but you
no,
could.
no, I
But then
wouldn't.
it has you as your training set. And so then you
Isn't
can
that
say,
what,
write an email in the style of Patrick, and it could do that. Because
isn't
now,
that what the new iPhones are going to do now?
Yeah.
Have
I
it
mean,
built into your phone, so it'll get your email anyway.
yeah, I mean that's the thing.
I'm wondering if I couldn't set up something where I could have AI mimic my existence while I leave the phone at home, and then I go hike up into the mountains and live a peaceful life and just let the AI handle everything.
Yeah,
You joke about that. You think they're not talking about that, Patrick?
I'm
yeah,
sure
it's
of
already
it.
happening.
It's not,
Avatars? Yeah. So I have a little joke here. Hopefully you guys find it funny. Like, so there was a guy, a comedian, he was saying, he said, I was walking out of the room, and, um, you know, Siri did something for him, and he said, thank you, Siri. And he said, my wife turned to me and said, you don't have to thank Siri. He said, yes, I do. He said, don't you watch science fiction? He said, I am being nice to these bots. He said, when they take over the world, he said, I want to be on their good side. I want to be the one that was nice to them. He said,
yeah.
you can be rude to them. I'm going to be nice to them.
That's funny.
You don't want to show up at your front door and say, hey Siri, could you open the front door for me? And he goes, I'm sorry, Dave. I don't think I can do that. My favorite movie, 2001: A Space Odyssey, made that point back in '68.
Yeah, and here we are, right? Years
Here we
later.
are.
Yeah. Well, we're almost out of time. I feel lucky. I live in a neighborhood where my kids can be very free range, and that they can walk out the door and they can be gone, and I can be like, hey, does anybody know where my kids are? And I can send them home. And they're a little bit older now, so they don't free range as much, but yeah, there's definitely like a little park. They can go play soccer with their friends, they can do whatever, and then they can come home. Or they can ride their bikes down to the grocery store and then come home, and my kids will do that, which is great. And so they do have this element of free play that is still a part of their lives that I very much grew up on. But I know that not everybody has that. So, look for these elements that we can have, and hopefully we can, try to find ways of, still building that into our lives, or providing those opportunities for the little ones that we love. So,
And like Jackie said, maybe this is a blip. Maybe we learn and we move on. And unfortunately, there's a fraction of population is probably worse off for the blip, but hopefully we recover.
yeah, learn something and move forward.
Well, I'm fairly optimistic. I think even the kids today that have fallen into this rabbit hole as adults have the capability of crawling out of it if they see a reason to do it. And I think they can. I think they can.
Mhm.
Well,
Yeah.
it's been lovely.
Us?
Very interesting book. And Brooke, I'm not sure whether I want to thank you or curse you for suggesting it because
You're
I read
glad you
that
met
book.
me.
Oh, I am totally glad I met you. I'm just not so sure I'm glad I read the book. I enjoyed the book very much, but it really kind of messed my life up a little bit, because it's like you see something, and if
You
you
can't
and
unsee
you
it.
can't just choose to not do anything.
Yeah.
At least
The
I
only thing to
can't.
do now is go back and read his other book. Go read The Coddling of the American Mind.
I don't know.
Do
Fool
it.
me once, shame on
Do
me.
it.
Fool
Do
me
it, Patrick.
twice, won't get fooled
No,
again.
this because The Coddling, it's like it's the precursor to everything, and he wrote it with another guy, with Greg Lukianoff. Really good stuff. It's not just this. I promise. That's the thing, is it's not. It's like it's a precursor to this. So this you already know about. It's like, yeah, it's really good.
Well, maybe I will.
I'd recommend it if you're curious.
All right. So
Always curious.
I like curiosity. It makes me happy.
That's good.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for initiating and very
Thanks for-
thought provoking.
Yeah, it's been wonderful to meet you and chat
Yep,
with you
me
these
too.
hours. Yeah,
poor Kathy, she's trying to do double duties.
I know.
Okay,
All right. Well, have a good night, y'all.
thank
Until
you.
next time.
Good night.
Bye-bye.